Tyson Fury has announced his retirement from boxing. Let's just have a look at how he did it, first of all.
Hi everybody, I'm going to make this short and sweet. I'd like to announce my retirement from boxing. It's been a blast. I've loved every single minute of it, and I'm going to end with this. Dick Turpin wore a mask. God bless everybody. See you on the other side. Get up!
Oh, very Tyson Fury-esque with that. As you can see, Ben Ransom is ready to speak to us. I know you've already been talking to Pep Guardiola. Now you've got to put your boxing hat on, Ben. Thank you so much. Let's just talk about it. What did you make of it? A little bit cryptic in areas of that message. What did you make of it, first and foremost?
Yeah, very cryptic and typical Tyson Fury. Not the first time, Vicky, as I've heard you've mentioned already, we've heard him make a similar statement about retiring. Rewind the clock to 2022 after he'd just beaten Dillian Whyte, and he said that that was it. He was done. He was ready to ride off into the sunset, and then he was tempted back, shall we say, if we can use that word, to fight Derek Chisora, and then ultimately it led him on a path towards the opportunity of being undisputed heavyweight king. So I think we can take it with a slight pinch of salt, just given that previous. Now, I think the cryptic message about Dick Turpin wearing a mask is the bit that maybe makes me think there's more going on than he's letting slip at the moment. Now, it's a suggestion perhaps that someone is making some sort of hefty demands and they don't perhaps, they've got a bit of cheek in doing so. Could that be in reference to a possible all-British showdown with Anthony Joshua, the fight we've been waiting what feels like a decade for? Just maybe. We know those two have previous with regards to negotiations. But if we are to take him at his word, and he is done, you have to say this about Tyson Fury. He's not really got anything left he has to prove in the ring or left to achieve in boxing. He's been right to the very top, and he's fought some fantastic fighters, not least Alexander Usyk in that two-fight showdown which we saw unfold over the last 12 months and came up just short in both of them. But nonetheless, Usyk's a great fighter, and I think Tyson Fury will always be remembered as a great fighter when he does finally decide to hang up his gloves, whether it be now or whether it be at some point in the future.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, he's such a character. We're seeing the pictures of him now, you know, when he sat there on his throne with his crown and robe. You know, he brings so much to the ring, doesn't he? Not only in the ring, but outside of it as well. Fight fans will want to see this fight against Anthony Joshua. You talk about temptation. He was tempted out with Derek Chisora, like you say, back in 2022. Do you think this is enough to keep him out of retirement? And this might be, like you say, just a little bit of a gameplay at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's obviously been something going on in the background. I mean, Eddie Hearn told us, didn't he, over the weekend at the Ring Magazine Awards that they were hoping to get a date this summer at Wembley for Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury to finally get in the ring together. Anthony Joshua was posting all over social media over the weekend saying he was at the awards ceremony looking for Tyson Fury. I think he was hoping for a bit of a face down just to start to ramp up a bit of momentum around that fight. And Fury didn't want to go. He decided to skip the event completely, despite the fact he was one of the fights he was involved in against Alexander Usyk was up for an award. So that is an interesting statement in itself. And look, I mean, if the final ever ring walk from Tyson Fury is him dressed as Santa Claus coming out to Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You, then that would be probably the most Tyson Fury thing ever. You mentioned his ring walks. They've been fantastic. He is a showman in and out of the ring. He will be sorely missed when he does go, but I just wonder whether this story might have another chapter or two left to read and be written by Fury, because he is someone who also can't resist the allure of boxing, and his star is still incredibly high. You look at the fights he's been involved in particular in Saudi Arabia, that's where the money's coming from. Turkey Al Sheikh as well over the weekend was asked about the fights he wants to make in 2025, and this is the man that's been behind all of the biggest fights we've seen Saudi Arabia put on over the last couple of years. And he said one of those fights was Tyson Fury against Anthony Joshua. So there will be 100 million reasons why Tyson Fury will be tempted back into the ring this year. It just remains to be seen whether he is true to his word, and that is it, or whether he fancies one last dance.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether he fancies one last dance, as you say. It's a hard one to call, isn't it? Because, like you say, he does have a little bit of that mischief about him, dare we say. If he does come back and fight Anthony Joshua, you could understand why that would be the last fight for him, the last dance. Because, like you say, when he said this in 2022, he was talking about his wife, his children. He talked about, you know, he's still got his brains and all that sort of thing. And it is a brutal sport. Let us not forget that. So you could understand that perhaps if he does come back for Joshua, that will be it then.
Yeah, I think we've even seen the difference in him. I mean, I was lucky enough to cover some of his biggest fights, the Deontay Wilder fights, the first two anyway. One was in LA when a very out-of-shape Tyson Fury, if you remember, who had been down a really dark path mentally. He'd been down roads of addiction to drugs and drink and was massively out of shape. And he'd got himself back in the gym with Ben Davison and started to get himself fit and to get his mind back on the fight game. And he was tempted into a fight with Deontay Wilder. I think the Wilder camp thought he'd be a really good name to get on their CV, an out-of-shape Fury, ring rust, etc. Fury put up a fantastic effort in Los Angeles, and that's obviously where we saw that now iconic Undertaker moment where he was put down on the canvas late on in the fight and he just brought himself almost back to life. It was given as a draw. Then when they fought again a couple of years later, the transition we saw in Fury under Sugar Hill Stewart, the fact that he came out, and this is a man who's not been renowned as a big puncher, and he absolutely destroyed Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder at the time was the most fearsome puncher in the heavyweight division. Fury just didn't give him a sniff that night in Las Vegas. It was absolutely incredible. One of the best boxing performances I've ever been lucky enough to see in the flesh, and the way he just seized that world title back was showed a real desire. He comprehensively beat Wilder again in the trilogy. Obviously, you mentioned the likes of Derek Chisora, Dillian Whyte, other fighters he's gone through. But I think what we have seen also is there are now miles on the clock. I think we can safely say from even the time between the first fight against Alexander Usyk in May of last year through to the second fight, the rematch just before Christmas, he looked noticeably slower, I think. He didn't quite carry the same engine, which is something that has fueled his whole career. For such a big man to have such a cardio system, to be able to go so deep, has been something that's really set him apart. And I think the miles on the clock will certainly be on his mind, but we all want to see the Anthony Joshua fight. AJ's obviously desperate for him. I think it would be such a shame if in this era we don't get Britain's two greatest heavyweights to finally settle their beef in the ring. It feels like all the stars had aligned for it to happen this year. As I say, it may still go that way because there'll be a lot of people with a lot of money and a lot of influence who'll be desperately trying to make that fight happen nonetheless.
Well, as we can see, this fight against Usyk, you know, it's a Tyson Fury, though, that appears to be holding all the cards on this, doesn't he, Ben?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Fury knows his position of strength. I mean, he's someone who's very much his own man. I think that's fair to say. Not easy to negotiate with Tyson Fury. I mean, we can go all the way back to the fight against Vladimir Klitschko, can't we, in 2015, when Klitschko at the time ruled the heavyweight division. Him and his brother Vitaly ruled the landscape completely. They held all the belts between them. Vladimir was the unified champion, and if you remember when Fury went there, he was an up-and-coming fighter, and he was made to dance through so many hoops just to get in the ring. And you remember the controversy about the canvas and the gloves on the night, and they were ready to walk away. There's a lot of brinkmanship there from Tyson Fury, and he went through, he seized the belts, and he showed that in that negotiation they weren't to be bullied. And I think that's something we have seen from Fury year in, year out, and I'd expect something similar as they try, I'm sure, and still make this AJ fight.
Brilliant from you, as always. Thank you so much, Ben, for joining us on this. Let's get more on this. Eleanor Roper is with Matthew Macklin. Eleanor, good to see you. I'm guessing, you've asked Matthew, what are his thoughts on this? Is this the end of Tyson Fury?
Yeah, so much to talk about. We're here in central London where the boxing world is gathering. We're expecting a press conference later this afternoon ahead of this fight between Daniel Dubois and Joseph Parker. But huge news in the world of boxing, this announcement from Tyson Fury. As you say, Matt Macklin here alongside me. I mean, Matt, why don't you start by giving us your initial thoughts on this announcement?
I think my initial thoughts were what a day to announce it. We've got this big presser for Dubois against Parker,
yep.
and the massive undercard with it. But I don't know really. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if it is the end, because it's probably a good way to go out. I know it's a loss, but you're going out on back-to-back losses in close fights again, and undisputed. The first one against Usyk, and second one, 3 belts on the line. But certainly the lineal undisputed, universally regarded. So, he's had an unbelievable career, fine career. Maybe he doesn't want to go down and have lesser fights than be at the top. I mean, when was the last time Fury fought where he wasn't the defending champion? It's been quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, lots to unpick. The timing, an interesting one, as you say. A huge day here in central London. A lot of other boxes being celebrated, big fights being looked ahead to. But here we are talking about Tyson Fury.
He's a master, isn't he? Very strategic, very good at getting it back about him. But I'd imagine where Fury is at the moment, following the defeat, I'd imagine he's changing his mind quite a lot. There's probably days where he feels like, I am done. And then he probably has days where he thinks, no, we could come back, maybe get the winner of Parker and Dubois. Or maybe not Parker because they're good mates, but certainly Dubois. If Dubois was to beat Parker, he could definitely come back against him, and then maybe AJ, and that's a bigger fight again with a world title on the line. Who knows, maybe there would be a third Usyk fight, because, in Fury's mind, how I read in what he said about when he said Dick Turpin wore a mask. I felt that's open to interpretation.
I was going to say that is very cryptic. Does he feel he's been robbed in that fight with Usyk?
That's how I read it.
I mean, some other discussion here about whether he feels he is being robbed in terms of any potential negotiations over a future fight with Anthony Joshua.
Yeah, so interestingly, a few people said that to me, and I was a bit
hadn't
surprised.
occurred to you, had it?
That hadn't even occurred to me. I just thought he was referring to the 2 defeats to Usyk, because certainly the first one was a split decision, second one a lot of close rounds. There were lots of people that had Fury winning the fight, so he felt he won the fight. Certainly he said he felt he won the fight, so I'm guessing that's what he was referring to.
I mean, the Anthony Joshua conversation is an interesting one. It's been touted as a fight for 2025. I think we have heard Eddie Hearn mention that he's potentially reserved Wembley Stadium with a date in mind for that fight. Disappointing for boxing fans if that means we're now not going to see that.
Yeah, definitely sort of like the one that got away, wasn't it? Or, one of the ones that got away, certainly. But also, the shine has gone off it a little bit with no world title belt on the line. If Fury was to fight Dubois, for example, if Dubois beats Parker, all of a sudden, it's a little bit, AJ versus Fury defending his title against AJ. That's a bigger fight again, but of course, the longer you keep putting off these things, the more other things can happen, and you don't get the fight that you wanted in the first place. So there is an argument that, there's nothing standing in the way now between AJ and Fury, and okay, the world titles aren't on the line, but it's still a huge fight.
We'll all watch it.
Absolutely.
I mean, so many questions here. We are going to grab a word with Frank Warren, Fury's promoter, who I have seen, and we'll be hoping to get his thoughts on this announcement. Fury has, of course, retired before in 2022. He did return to the ring 6 months later. Will we see him again?
I think it's 50-50. Yeah. Like I say, I think he probably does have days where he genuinely thinks, I'm done, I've had enough, I've had a great career, blah, blah, blah. But I'd say there are other days where he wants to fight again.
He's a fighting man. We've heard him talk about this before in terms of how that helps his mental health as well, having something to train for, something to work towards. You'll know that as a fighter, what it's like having that daily routine and how hard it is to then move away from the sport.
Of course, but that day's always going to come, and it's going to, it's going to come sooner rather than later. Even if he does fight on, he's very much in the twilight of his career. If he boxes again, so he's going to have to go through that tough period of time regardless.
Okay, thank you so much for your thoughts, and we will be back with you as we get more reaction to this huge news of Tyson Fury announcing his retirement.